Hello and welcome to the Jiu Jitsu Oracle. I'm Ross. I'm joined as always by my co-host Calum, and we are going to talk about the Who's Number One event, where there were huge wins for Nicky Ryan and Nicholas Meregali in particular. We're also going to have a little chat about the ADCC Asia trials that happened earlier today, and after a request from one of our viewers or listeners, we're going to have a quick chat about the tournament that Craig Jones is trying to put together. Before we go on, please like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you need to do to spread the word of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle. But first things first, let's get into the Who's Number One event. Calum, what is your headline from the show?
Is Meregali the new Gordon?
Is Meregali the new Gordon? That's what Calum's starting with. What do you think, Calum, now that you've posed the question?
Yeah, it kind of seems like he's filling into that position a little bit, especially with some of these matches on Who's Number One, where a lot of the time maybe a bit of a mismatch and we're kind of just watching to see a bit more of a technical display. I don't think it's quite on the same level as Gordon yet, where it's just like completely and utterly like one-sided and Gordon's just doing whatever he wants with his opponent, but still like really dominant and kind of getting to that position where we kind of know that Meregali's just going to win the match pretty easily, and that's what we saw against Wagner in that match. A little bit of back and forth from the stand-up, but then as soon as Meregali got it to the ground, it was pretty one-sided from there.
We were going to do a preview show for Who's Number One, but we couldn't do a preview show for Who's Number One because the show was going to happen after we trained on Tuesday, and we weren't able to train on Tuesday. So people didn't know what our predictions were, other than before the event, I managed to put up on our story that there was no preview show, but we both thought Meregali was going to win, which isn't a big shock. And I think everyone thought Meregali was going to win, certainly anyone I spoke to. What I was impressed with was Meregali won how he said he was going to win. So he wanted to show off the wrestling that he's worked, he wanted to show off the top game that he's been working, and he certainly showed them off against Wagner Rocha. So what did you think about those elements of Meregali's performance?
Yeah, so we've not really seen Meregali play guard at all, I don't think, since his last ADCC Worlds outing, where we did see some of his guard and it looked pretty good. And Nogi, I don't know if he's made adjustments to his guard or he's just like doubling down on the wrestling game, but yeah, that's what we've seen him work a lot. And yeah, it looked good against Wagner. I think Wagner was being somewhat negative some parts of the match, kind of walking away, just trying to disentangle from the hand fighting some of the time, but then other times he was engaging and there was some good back and forth. So he got to some underhooks and then saw Meregali counter that with a nice Uchimata until Meregali got his arm drags and forced the kind of back, and Wagner rolled out of that, and then we ended up on the ground from there. So yeah, his wrestling looks good. Still think it can come a long way, and if that's what he's working, I'm sure it will continue to look better and better. But yeah, I thought it looked pretty good.
Nice arm drag, forced Wagner to Granby roll, got top position. Top position, I will say I have been on the bottom in this scenario. Defending grappler like Meregali is, like a truck on top, where you're using your knee, terrible idea. Like if you don't have feet in front of these guys, you're not going to stop them. If you're just using knees and elbows, I don't think that's like strong enough. So once Meregali got a guard passing position where Wagner was using his knee as a frame, it wasn't a strong enough frame to stop Meregali. Nice. We saw some nice side movement from Meregali as well. And then once he got past the guard, his top game was totally dominant. There was sort of some transition of position in terms of Wagner was dogged in his defense. And I thought with 2 minutes to go, Meregali ended up back on top. And he tried smothering before, he tried pinning, tried taking the back. I was wondering, like, what was he going to do to finish? And then he went for the arm bar. So, fantastic finish, but it did look it was just crossing his mind that you could tell he really wanted the submission. And it was sort of, well, I'm not going to grind this guy out, so I'm going to have to like progress to a limb extension to get the finish. And then
quite a lot in some sub-only matches where guys have the back and they don't really want to maybe risk losing the back if it's a bit earlier in the match, so they'll go for like lower risk stuff like just feeding the rear naked choke and stuff, and then if it's getting towards the end of the match and they're really needing a sub, then they're kind of willing to risk the position a little bit to go for the armbar to get that sub.
Especially he's cooked them for a bit by that point. You know, I don't know how long Meregali had past the guard, but it was a good portion of time. You're going to be suffering underneath that. You mentioned Meregali's guard, just to go back to a chat we had on our previous pod about someone who went from gi to no gi, playing a sort of lasso spider guard and made the transition well, Felipe Andrew. So do you think there's anything preventing Meregali making that switch and using his guard? Because we've seen someone else play a similar guard. Or do you think like Meregali's just choosing not to play guard because he wants to really round out his wrestling and his top game?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the case that he is set on becoming good at wrestling and he really wants to put time into that and improve on that. But I do think his guard did look really good in ADCC. Like he swept Yuri from there in the final of the Absolute, and then passed his guard and we got on top. It just didn't count for points because it was the first half of the match. So like in general, I think his guard looked very good. And I remember a podcast that Craig Jones did when he was in the Emirates a few weeks ago. Quite an interesting point that I kind of agree with upon reflection, that a lot of the gi guys, I think because they play some of these upper body guards and they're used to like pummeling their feet onto the shoulders, generally have like better guard retention than the guys that don't come from a gi background, just because same thing in no-gi, like if you're able to like pummel your legs on the shoulders and create distance, like that's like really good for guard retention. We see that with guys like Levi Jones-Leary and stuff as well. I thought that was an interesting point. I think that translates over to what we saw from Meregali at ADCC. Really good framing, pummeling with the legs. But yeah, he didn't obviously have some of his go-to guards, like the upper body guards, gripping the sleeves, but I thought his guard play on the lower body with like the Deli Hiva getting into X guard was still really good and some of the best that we've kind of seen at that higher no-gi level as well. So I'm sure if he made some adjustments to his guard game, then we could see some pretty cool stuff from him in no-gi from his guard as well. I just don't think that's what he's wanting to focus on at the moment.
Is he the favourite for the under 99 title at the ADCC?
Well, we don't know who's going to be in the division yet. The last trials have finished, so we're kind of getting a picture now of how the divisions are going to look. Might be some guys moving certain divisions depending on certain things, but we'll just say that it roughly looks what it looked like last year. So we've got like Kaiden in there. It's difficult because obviously Meregali beat Kainen last time out, but then Kainen is a two-time champion at ADCC. So definitely one of the favourites. I'd say between him and Kainen, kind of just depends who does well on the day, I would say.
Okay. Have you got a question for me?
Not really. Just thought it was quite entertaining to see Wagner getting smashed after watching the press conference beforehand when he was calling Meregali like a selfish person and only caring about himself, coming from someone that is a steroid user in the sport. It's quite a selfish thing to do, I would think, to take steroids, especially at the age that he's at, potentially denying some younger people some opportunities. And he should probably be kind of on the decline physically, but he's not. He's taking steroids. I thought that was quite entertaining that he decided to call Meregali a selfish person when that's quite a selfish thing to do. So I was quite happy to see him get smashed in that match, to be honest.
I didn't think my question there was going to provoke that response. I did find it amusing. I think it's part of the game beforehand. Like Wagner was saying, he wasn't really impressed with Meregali's wrestling.
What?
Meregali wrestles him in the match. Did find that amusing. My point was, what was my question to you? What was your big headline from the event?
Yeah.
Right? So I'll ask the question myself. Ross, what was your big headline from the event? I'm going with biggest win of Nicky Ryan's career by far, beating JT Torres. Beforehand, Nicky had talked about how big a match it was for him, particularly given his competitive outings recently. Like, they've been sporadic, shall we say, often hampered by injury, unfortunately. I think prior to beating JT, like, prime Nicky Ryan was a run he put together before an ADCC where he beat PJ Barch, Gabriel Almeida, and Dante Leon. And then he lost to Renato Canuto at the ADCC. But those 3 wins were probably like the best run of Nicky's career. And I think JT Torres is a step up from the caliber of those guys. So you're talking about like multiple-time world champion JT Torres. Whether JT's like still peak JT, I don't know. But still very good all round, very good wrestler, very good submission grappler. And Nicky won with a footlock. And I think that's because serious, in form, conditioned, healthy Nicky Ryan is a handful for anyone. And it just adds more depth to that 77 division. So, what do you think of Nicky Ryan's performance?
Yeah, I thought he looked really good. I kind of agree and disagree with what you said there. I think, like, on paper, just off of like what he's done in the sport, definitely he's like head and shoulders above anyone else Nicky Ryan's beaten. But I do think, like, just based on what we've seen from him the past few years, like, after he started winning the ADCCs, he did become very inactive. I don't know if that played a part in him, like, not seeming to be on that level anymore, or whether it was other factors. But I think, like, saw PJ and Dante both get to the semi-finals of ADCC, so I think debatably they're better wins just because of, like, on form. But yeah, just like an all-time name to get on your resume and the qualifications and achievements of JT. I think it is a really big win for Nicky. But yeah, good match. Some good hand fighting back and forth from the both of them. They kind of ended up in a bit of a odd position off of Nicky's low single. So when someone kind of, like, it's not really a sprawl, but like one of the defenses for a low single is them turning their knee out, and then you can kind of posture up out the back door. Instead of coming right out, they kind of became entangled a little bit there, and I got the sense that, like, Nicky felt quite comfortable in that weird sort of position, and I felt like JT looked a little bit kind of out of his depth a bit, maybe a bit panicked and less familiar with that position. I don't know if that's something that Nicky Ryan, like, kind of has experienced a bit in the training room, and he feels quite comfortable from there. But from there, we saw, like, some kind of back and forth stuff. I think JT got in on Nicky's leg a little bit, and then some exchanges back and forth ended up in, like, a Philly saddle sort of situation, like leg spaghetti, and Nicky Ryan managed to get the ankle lock off of that. So yeah, really good performance from him, I think.
So a couple of things on that. I think the credentials of JT adds to this victory for Nicky Ryan. I also think the context of the match when it happened adds to the victory for Nicky Ryan. So that run against PJ, Gabriel Almeida, and Doug Leon, like, Nicky Ryan was fit and well and managed to string together 3 matches and looked in great form going into an ADCC. So you'd have gone into it full of confidence. Now, like I said, he's been a bit sporadic in his competition matches, and then he's facing JT Torres a couple of months out from the ADCC Worlds, which he has an invite to, so yeah, he'd be there. But if he'd have lost that match against JT Torres, I think, like, big questions would have been asked about Nicky competitively. But he came through a test where I think there's a load of pressure on him. Saw his reaction at the end of the match. You don't always see Nicky Ryan celebrate like that, but, like, he was ecstatic with the win, and I think, like, he knew how big that was for his career potentially as a competitor. I also think I don't know Nicky, I don't get to spend time around him, but I hear him talk on podcasts about how he lives and how he lives as an athlete, and the strength and conditioning, or at times lack of, and the rehab, or at times lack of. But I saw a video the other day of him jumping in ice baths, and that seems to be a regular part of his regimen. So he does, like, I don't know too much, But good performance last night, and given what I saw on that little video about his training regimen and stuff like that, he does seem to be, and he's getting a lot of good rounds in. You know, I see him often scrapping with people at B team and looking really good. So he does seem to be in a good place, jiu-jitsu wise and athletically. So I hope we see a great Nicky Ryan performance at the ADCC, because I think like he's been talked of for years and we've seen his potential, but I think, you know, I'd love to see him in the mix with the likes of like the Rotolos or Mika, people like that. I think that that's what his potential was, and I don't think he's quite got there thus far. You know, not necessarily like his fault, but injuries are terrible in sport and they can really knock you. But yeah, if you can get there and go for a deep run in the ADCC and mix it with these guys, I'd love to see that. Okay, where do you want to go next on the card?
Let's talk about Baby Shark versus Shea, the first match of the main card.
Okay, let's talk about Diogo. Baby Shark against Shea Montague. Okay, lead us on with that discussion, Cal.
Okay, so when I woke up and looked at Instagram, I spoiled the card for myself. I had a quick look at all the results and all the little highlights, and I saw that Baby Shark had submitted Shea with like a front headlock. I think it was an anaconda. So I went to coach my session in the morning, then I watched the full matches afterwards. But I was kind of wondering how he had got to that on Shea, because I know Shea plays a lot of like supine guard, like flat on his back, and it can be quite hard to kind of get a hold of his head. But then watching the match, it kind of made sense. So really precise and purposeful passing from Baby Shark, I think. Never really allowing Shea to get off any offense, at the same time just like constantly pressuring Shea. Obviously a bit of a weight discrepancy in this one, I think around about 10 pounds, but yeah, really good outside passing, just keeping tight control of those ankles, wearing on the hip flexors of Shea, getting his head in super tight when he gets around the legs into like the kind of north-south passing, cross grip passing, those kind of things, and then eventually leading into a stack pass, and that's kind of how he got the front headlock when Shea actually went to kind of like a tripoded position to kind of alleviate some of the stress of that, which is quite surprising because I've put Shea in stacked positions before and he seems very comfortable there. So kind of went all the way through, kind of back rolled almost into a tripod position, and that's when Baby Shark was able to get the front headlock from there. So yeah, really impressive from Baby Shark, really good passing there. Again, like very purposeful passing, like nothing was really wasted. It was all kind of like consistent pressure, wearing out Shea. Everything was like doing the right thing, you know.
I think Shea was caught in a bit of a dilemma that he wanted to sit back to guard.
Yeah.
Baby Shark was creating a lot of pressure on like his neck and his shoulders and stuff. So then he wanted to go back to sort of like a tripod / turtle position, but then he was only wanting to go to that position to give himself a bit less pressure, so then he could sit back to guard. And he kind of got caught between the two. And then I don't know if I'm quoting this exactly, but the other day I was looking on Instagram at stories, and Joseph Chen's coach Dima had posted that he thinks the most underutilized, or the potential, the position with like the most potential in jiu-jitsu that's not really used to its full potential, is the front headlock position. And I just thought that quote was interesting before I saw the match with Baby Shark and Shea, because it then got me thinking that we'd said before, we didn't get to do a full preview of the show, but we did have a little chat on our last pod about this match in particular, because Shea being Scottish and us both knowing him and have trained with him and followed his career through, take a keen interest in what he's doing, and it's great to see a Scottish Jiu-Jitsu player make it onto our card like WNO. So I thought we said, oh, it's going to be very, very hard to pass his guard, because he can basically like put his legs behind his head. So how's it? But then when I watched the match, I realized like you made me think that you don't have to pass the guard of someone to beat them, even if they want to stay on bottom position. I think it's often like Gordon speaks about, you know, if you've got the threat of entering legs, taking the back, passing the guard, like things will open up. And then maybe wrapping the head adds to that.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, yeah, like, and Baby Shark's got a tremendous darce, and we've seen him use it before in matches, and he's got that celebration that he does after getting the choke, essentially. So, but what do you think about like the way that front headlock position can be utilized against guard players, or just in jiu-jitsu in general?
Yeah, so like what I was thinking like off of that was just like how important it is just to be good everywhere and have threats everywhere. Otherwise, you'll miss like opportunities to like capitalize on things in the match. So if you didn't have a front headlock game, or like you didn't have a certain like attack in a certain area, then you're kind of just missing these opportunities that you might not get at other points in the match to finish the match. And like going off what you were saying, like the threat of other things, personally, I always find it a lot more tiring and like anxiety provoking almost when I'm playing guard against someone that isn't only trying to pass my guard, but they are also like jumping on like front headlocks or dropping back on leg locks, and I've got to like stress about all these other things instead of just like retaining my guard. So I definitely think that is like a big thing, especially if you're getting someone with like a really good guard. And yeah, if these kind of opportunities present themselves, then you should kind of have these strong attacks in these areas to take advantage of that.
I would like to try adding more front headlock to my game, particularly against very flexible, bendy guard players. So I'll have to work on that at training. Do you know anyone who I could perhaps practice that against?
There is one guy, but you're not allowed to touch his head, so you just leave him alone, please.
Yeah, you got to be. Calum's being careful with a knock, so maybe we can replicate the sequence that led to Baby Shark's finish. But anyone who's seen Calum will know he has Shea-like tendencies in his guard game.
Version of Shea as far as my flexibility, but still quite flexible in there.
So, great win for Baby Shark. Great. Oh, I saw that Shea posted on his story after the match that he couldn't get going.
Yeah.
And I agree, but I think credit to Baby Shark, he didn't let Shea get going. I thought the physicality of Baby Shark off the bat was very, very strong and really put Shea sort of under duress from the start of the match.
Yeah. It obviously was like a size difference.
Yeah.
Match, but yeah, just like a lot of high level guys I've rolled with, that has been like one of the big kind of overarching things that I felt against them, especially on bottom, is just like they just don't let me do my jiu-jitsu to them. Like they'll be either in their passing positions, like whether that's like a knee cut or headquarters, or even kind of like on the outside, and then they're just like either passing in a way like we saw from Baby Shark, who was like pressing the ankles against Shea's button, moving side to side, or like if they're kind of in a knee cut or whatever, and I go to like grab the heel and spin underneath, they're just like monitoring that and addressing that straight away, and it's like really frustrating and annoying to deal with, and almost like disheartening. And then it's like when I start to kind of like feel like, oh, this is really annoying, that's when they start to kind of put more pressure on and they kind of break me down a little bit. So yeah, I do think that's something personally that I've felt with the really high level guys that I've rolled with, and I'm sure that's something that Baby Shark was doing well in that match as well.
Okay, next match. What are we talking about?
Let's talk about Tommy and Andrew Tackett.
Great win for Andrew.
Yeah.
Won by rear naked choke from back control. Had the back for a good portion of time off a very athletic back attack. What did you think of Andrew's performance?
Yeah, good. Some cool back and forth exchanges on the feet. I didn't think Tommy was actually doing too bad on the feet, and then we saw him pull, which no complaints because Tommy's got a good guard, so it was cool to see that. Yeah, super kind of athletic passing from Andrew, just like diving, controlling the head, diving his head into the hips and getting past the guard. I think we saw Tommy try to turtle from there. Then that's when we saw Andrew take the back. It was quite a while after taking the back he actually sunk in the submission. Seen from other matches from Tommy that he does actually have really good back defense, and his ability to like get out of there and get back to his game is really good. So that kind of highlights the level of back control that Andrew's got, and we did kind of see that. Anytime he was like maybe going a little bit too high when Tommy was in turtle, he was very disciplined about getting his chest back a little bit lower down the shoulder blades, keeping his chest behind Tommy's back and not kind of letting himself get too disconnected from that like chest to back connection.
I love the no fear attitude of Andrew. He just backs himself all the time.
Yeah.
Goes into exchanges, just trying to create some action, trying to create some chaos, and backs himself to come out on top. It's fantastic to watch. You know, he's the sort of that you really want on your show.
Yeah, well, backing himself, he called out Big Dan on that Who's Next show. I don't think anyone was really wanting the match with Big Dan, considering he had about 150 pounds on everyone else in the show. But yeah, he wanted that match, and then he went in and won it. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
I think like a submission win over Tommy Langacker as well, like really puts Andrew in contention for like day 2 of the ADCC. You know,
100%. Yeah, I don't know if there'll be how many like big shows guys will be doing the lead up to ADCC, but I think like Andrew versus Nicky, them both coming off these wins, that would be a cool one to see. Another rematch between Andrew and Mika. I think they both fought maybe when they were around 17, so I think that would be cool to see as well. But yeah, some definitely good matches we can see from Andrew in that 77 division.
Good. Okay. Next match.
Let's talk about Pena and Lovato.
Do we have to?
Yeah, it wasn't the most exciting match, I don't think.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I watched these matches before going to training this morning. So on a Saturday, trained at 9 o'clock in the morning. So got up about 7:30, thought, I've got to get through the matches before I go to training. Inevitably, someone will spoil what happened. But also when I come back, I don't have loads of time to sit and watch jiu-jitsu later in the day. Anyway, put on Pena against Lovato. Saw that they started on the feet. Thought, okay, we're probably going to see a bit of wrestling. I'll skip it on a little bit. They were still wrestling. Skipped on a bit more. They were still wrestling. So I didn't really watch much of this match. Did you watch the whole match, Calum?
I did watch the whole match, yeah.
Think?
Yeah, not the most exciting match to watch, really. I'm kind of looking a lot at wrestling myself and studying it, so I'm enjoying watching it a lot more than I used to. But there wasn't really much going on here. There was like some kind of tie-ups we saw going on, some like underhook attempts and stuff, but both of them didn't really seem to be wanting to commit too much. I was kind of thinking watching the match that is it partly the kind of length of these matches? So like 15-minute match, both these guys, kind of bigger guys, a little bit older, potentially past their prime as well, could maybe say. So I think both of them are good guard players. We saw both of them pull at points in the match, but I don't know if they kind of were wanting to run down the clock a little bit and maybe wanted to get on top to not use as much energy, or like only kind of play guard later on in the match. So I wonder maybe in a shorter time frame if we would see some more action, or someone maybe a little bit more willing to pull guard in that. That's kind of what I was thinking off of that. But yeah, not the most exciting match to watch at this point.
What do you think of Felipe Pena heading into the ADCC? Where do you think going to place?
Is he doing under 99 or over, do you know?
Question. I don't think anyone's like definitively confirmed for a division that I've seen. I've seen guys win trials. I've seen invites go out, but there's still talk of like guys switching divisions and things like that. Last I heard. So yeah, okay, we've got a question there. Like what's Pena going to compete at? But in general, like his form going into it, what do you think?
Yeah, he definitely doesn't seem to be the same Felipe Pena that we saw in 2017, going on that run and winning the absolute division, and then like he also had a bunch of hype around him from beating Gordon a couple times. Doesn't really seem to be that same Felipe just with some of the matches he's had. He's had some good performances, like close match with Nicky Rod. I think he won that, but it was like a bit of controversy. I think that could have went either way. And then, to be fair, he actually looked pretty good, I thought, in his last match with Gordon, even though he still quit the match and lost. I thought he looked pretty good in it. But yeah, some of the other performances we've seen from him lately, I don't know if it's like he's kind of fallen off a little bit or like the general level of everyone else has risen up. But yeah, he doesn't really strike me as like a favourite for any of these divisions anymore.
What I will say is that he finds ways to win.
Yeah.
And that match with Nicky Rod was very close. I had Pena in. I thought he would get the nod, but very, very match. And I agree. I think the match with Gordon, it actually went quite a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we saw Gordon afterwards saying that like, oh yeah, I was trying to wear him down, but then we also heard him beforehand saying that he was going to like be selling his passing DVDs with this match, and he was going to pass his guard so many times, and he didn't pass his guard once in that like 45-minute period. So I thought it was impressive regardless of the fact that he didn't do too much offensively, and he didn't win the match. Like just him being able to hold off Gordon as long as he did and being able to kind of hang with him, I thought it was quite an impressive performance. And actually coming off the back of that, I was quite excited to see kind of Felipe against some of these other guys. But then after seeing some of those other matches he's been in against other high-level guys, he's, I don't know, maybe just not at the level I kind of thought he was.
I think after the match, Gordon has controlled the narrative as to what happened.
Yeah.
And remember, the match came off the back of Felipe's friend, Leandro Lowe, being killed. So it was a good performance, very difficult circumstances. And I think if you go back and watch the match, I remember going back and watching it like not that long ago, and actually like his guard play stands up pretty well.
Yeah, since Gordon's like became the kind of grappler that he is, kind of like used to be kind of feared for his leg locks, and now I think he's most feared for like his top game. Nobody really wants to be underneath him. So since Gordon's kind of morphed into that version of himself, I don't really think we've seen anyone do as well on the bottom against Gordon as Felipe did in that match. I don't know if you can think of any other examples where someone's done that well.
No, off the top of my head, no. I thought it was good. I don't think Gordon actually passed either. I mean, maybe he got close to the pass just before Felipe called it a day, but I don't think he actually scored a pass.
No, he definitely didn't.
I remember Felipe using sort of like 50-50 and positions around about 50-50 really well in the match. And yeah, I thought it was super impressive performance, especially the way Gordon plays passing on top, which is to grind you out over time. Like Felipe actually held him off for a good portion of time in the match. So I would say like Felipe, yeah, it's like we don't really get the same explosive, exciting back takes and stuff like that in the matches anymore.
Yeah. No
right?
aura.
Pardon?
No aura anymore. Used to have a bit around him. I feel like he's completely lost that.
Okay, so that's a flashback to our last pod where we were chatting about the aura of Mika and other athletes. So yeah, perhaps Felipe didn't carry the same aura, but he is a winner. He is, like, I wouldn't like to get drawn against him under ADCC rules. He finds ways to sort of secure victory, especially in close matches. I believe one match still talk about on the card.
Yeah, got Jasmine Rocha versus Emily Ferreira.
Jasmine won by sub.
Yeah, Aoki lock maybe 5 minutes into the match, so kind of went straight into the leg entanglement early in the match, and then out of that there was some passing by Emily and guard by Jasmine until Jasmine got into her game and got to Aoki lock, and then yeah, it was pretty swift finish from there once she got into her position.
Can we tie this back to the Nicky Ryan submission? The threat now of the straight foot lock, certainly the shotgun grip variation, the Aoki lock when your heel slips to the inside onto the chest, and the outside heel hook when your heel slips to the outside. That triple threat is an absolute nightmare now in grappling.
Yeah, I remember, like, probably like the kind of few years before COVID, and then potentially even longer than that, kind of before my time. But like the straight ankle lock wasn't really respected as much. I feel like it was almost like, oh, you can kind of eat the pain a little bit and then get out. And number one, I think people's finishing mechanics from guys like Mikey Musumeci and Mateusz Szynski have gotten like way better. I remember speaking to Ellis Younger, who's like one of the best grapplers in the UK, and he kind of questioned whether he thought that like his ankles had maybe gotten weaker, but then he's like, no, it's probably everyone's just getting better ankle locks. He said he used to eat a lot of ankle locks in the collar belts, and then he's been on the receiving end of guys like Mateusz Szynski's ankle locks, who he got submitted by. So I think that's part of it as well. But I was also thinking whether like that whole thing of not really respecting ankle locks was like due in part to the kind of Meow era, where like they have just like completely like given disregard to their body and like completely like teared, I'm sure, countless ligaments in their legs just by not respecting it. And obviously they're just like kind of psychopaths in a way. Most people are willing to save their ligaments and their ankles and stuff just to not win a match. But I think that's maybe, I don't know if that's kind of part of it, where people look at the meows and like, okay, look, you can kind of eat these leg locks and you'll be fine, where in fact they're actually not fine. They're just damaging their bodies to stay in the match.
I think over my time in grappling, I certainly remember the time when one could eat an ankle lock a bit better. It was called like an Achilles lock, right? And there was a lot of pressure, but there wasn't like huge threats of a break.
Yeah.
And I think like you see now, like guys have really dialed in on like trying to create breaks around about like the bottom of the shin and the top of the foot. And there's a sort of real weak part there where there's like, I think feels like there's a big ligament, but like, you know, there's definitely like cracking potential there. And then guys have got better. Like I remember like Mikey showing like how to use like that area like as the fulcrum and put pressure on like the leg, like with a shotgun grip, for example, with your palm, and then pressure on the toes with like the back of your shoulders and using your lats and everything. I think like people like Mikey and Mateusz Szynski like are much better at understanding the way the foot connects to the leg and how to manipulate it to create like real damage and actually cause breaks there, rather than just like creating a lot of pressure on your Achilles. And yeah, while you can eat pressure, like you can't really do much if your foot's separated from the bottom of your leg. So you're going to have to submit. So I just think guys have got much, much better there. And then I think also guys have got better at controlling position so that they can attack that lock. So like inside heel hook became, I think, like the foot lock of choice. And I think that was massively in part to like the growth of the saddle and people really understanding how to control someone in that position and double trouble and blah, 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 right? And now you've got positions like the Philly saddle that like you can go back towards like outside attacks, right? Or like double down on the outside. I don't want to get too much into jiu-jitsu jargon, but I just think like there's better controlling positions now where you can actually get like strong grips on the bottom of the leg / foot to get breaking pressure. Whereas I don't really think there was, certainly like 5 years ago when the inside heel hook was in vogue, and then like 10 years ago where like people really struggled to finish ankle locks.
Yeah.
What do you think? You like a leg lock?
Yeah, can I agree with all that stuff you just said. I think a lot of people were trying to finish ankle locks before with the kind of traditional single leg X ashigarami position. You don't really get nearly as much extension from that as you do from like a butterfly ashi or like a hip post with kind of two feet on the hips, where there's kind of two like main things with the straight ankle lock. There's like how precise you're being with your grip, like manipulating their foot in a certain position with your lats and your arms, and then it's just like your sheer deadlift via like putting your feet on the hips. So like if you've got a strong enough one of either of those, you can do damage to the foot, and then if you put both of them together, it's pretty catastrophic. So I think the kind of leg positions people are using now gives them a bit more extension and a bit more power to kind of deadlift into the foot, as well as getting like a lot more technical with the kind of grips and the manipulation of the foot within the ankle lock grip.
While we're talking about ankles, I forgot to say this at the time. And just give a shout out to Nicky Ryan for going for an ankle pick. Because you don't see that loads in grappling, right? And again, like I think we've seen an evolution of wrestling in submission grappling.
Is this the one that led to the match going to the ground?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
ended up in a bit of a scrambly position, but again, he backed himself.
Yeah.
But I think we saw like trying to use traditional wrestling techniques in jiu-jitsu, especially techniques that were popular in MMA at the time. So it was like, let's go for blast doubles and single legs, right? And they're not the best for submission grappling because you leave yourself very exposed, or you can get you can either get sprawled heavy on, you can get your head wrapped, you can leave an arm out and get kimura, whatever, right? There's loads of like potential problems with it. And then like we've seen a lot more focus on upper body / Greco style wrestling. But then you've got the other extreme, the feet. And our wrestling coach at SBG Aberdeen, Mike Cowperthwaite, he's great at shooting low and getting on your ankle. And it's an absolute nightmare because it's so hard to react to because he covers so much ground, gets to the bottom of your body, and is attacking you. It's very difficult to get back into the game at that point. And I thought like it was fantastic to see someone like willing to like shoot that low, get a hold of a foot and get it to the ground and just do something different, but like different that makes sense to me. You know, it's logical to go for the extreme.
Yeah, so he did set it up from the hand fight as well. Like they were kind of tangled up and had some attachments on each other, and then he kind of popped the hands up, and that gave him his shot. And like you can still get the double legs and the single legs, but I think like setting them up a little bit better with the hand fighting is kind of the key, instead of just like shooting them from the outside with no real setup. Because obviously in MMA, like you were talking about, you'd be setting them up with punches or timing them when people are stepping in. You don't really have those same things for submission grappling. But I had it not coming to my head, so I'll let you talk there. See if I can.
Yeah, absolutely important.
Yes, definitely.
Important. Also for passing, I'm trying to get much better at that. Just while we're on the topic of like talking about improving grappling, so I think like traditionally, guys can be a bit laissez-faire at wading into the guard and then just seeing what happens and taking it from there. But our seminar with Taylor Pierman, who's going to be going to the ADCC finals, like he did a seminar on guard passing, but I really liked the attention he paid to like the setup at the start and trying to work to create his angles and put his opponent under duress. So setups are important, like, and good grappling transcends. So they're important for wrestling, important for guard passing. I think we've covered all the matches on the main card for WNO.
Yep.
And we've been talking for more than 40 minutes. So let's crack on. We have our ADCC Asia Trials correspondent, Calum, who bring us up to speed with the main talking points from the event, not the whole card. We'll get a chance to dive a bit deeper into it maybe in the days to come, but there's been a lot of grappling on already. But anyway, Calum, what are the big takeaways from the second ADCC Asia Trials?
Yeah, so taught class this morning, came home, ate whatever, watched the Who's Number One card, and then probably about an hour before filming this, I think the finals for the Asia Oceanic Trials were on, so only able to watch the 66, 77 and 88 finals, but there's some kind of things in there that made me want to go back and watch certain people's matches. So the 66 final, I might attempt to pronounce their names, but there was a Chinese gentleman and a Japanese gentleman in the final. Really good match. I'd not heard of either of these guys. The Chinese guy won. I'll give my attempt now at pronouncing his name. I think it is Hu Zhang Shi. So I looked him up after. He had like 550 followers, so like obviously no surprise I've not heard of him, but really impressive match. Both of them looked like really well rounded, really good from the feet, like really comfortable shooting in on takedowns, like got onto each other's back a couple times. Both of them had really good back defense. There was leg lock exchanges, good passing from the both of them, so like really well rounded. And it kind of struck me that like obviously the winner coming from China, and then looking at his social media, like obviously I'm sure he'll get a decent amount of followers now, but only 500 or so followers. It's like how many guys now that kind of grappling is spreading to some of these regions with like huge population bases, how many guys that are like getting like really good have we just not heard of? And maybe what is the sport going to look like in 10-15 years when some of these bigger population bases maybe see jiu-jitsu as like something they want to focus on as far as sports and not other things. So quite excited from that, and I'll definitely go back and watch some of his other matches from earlier in the trials because I thought he was really impressive. And then the 77 kilo final, two pretty well known grapplers. So I had Levi Jones-Leary against Jeremy Skinner. So obviously these two kind of known for their guard, but obviously no pulling guard in the final or you will get a penalty. So we saw some wrestling exchanges back and forth for a few minutes, and then Jeremy was able to hit like an arm drag onto the back of Levi, and Levi was able to defend the back and get to his guard off of that, which is where he wanted to be. This was before the point, so Jeremy, kind of knowing the rules, sat to his butt as well and started exchanging some leg locks with him. So I think from his point of view, he probably wouldn't have wanted to go into the points period being on top because Levi's got a really good guard and he would just need to sweep Jeremy from there. But playing in that double pool position with Levi is obviously quite dangerous, and Levi was able to get into his berimbolo position and take Jeremy's back from there, score his 3 points, and then kind of ride out the rest of the match in that back control situation. So that was really good match to see. I've not watched all of their matches, but I've seen on other people's stories that it was 6 matches, 6 berimbolos from Levi. So no surprise there. Really cool to see someone implementing that sort of game. You got a question?
Yeah.
Point.
Yeah. The no-gi bolo is a thing.
It is a thing, yeah. I remember it was maybe like back in 2019, a lot of people didn't feel like it was a valid technique, and then people started countering the legs with like not maybe a full berimbolo, but like berimbolo-esque positions like the wedge is probably what is most commonly called, where you can kind of take the back where someone's entering into your legs. But I think even the full berimbolo roll from like a De La Riva is still very valid. In no-gi, we see Levi kind of showing that off. It's definitely something I used a lot at blue and purple belt, even in no-gi divisions. Obviously, that's not a very high level, but we see Levi doing it at a high level. So I think it is a really valid technique in no-gi if you're good and skilled from there. But obviously, like we saw in the PJ match, it can also be difficult if someone's quite negative from that position and just like pulling their legs out and shoulder walking back from there.
I heard you might bring it back.
What's that?
I heard you might be bringing it back.
Yeah, it's true. Going back, vintage Calum.
Classic Calum. No-gi bolos, leg locks. Is there a bit of meta there? Are we going to see? Because I know Shizinski's trying to like blend the two.
Yeah, there's Shizinski versus Levi for the Polaris belt.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that'll be a good match. But what do you think about like the blend of like legs and back takes? Do they complement like the legs and the bolo? And is that like if you're predominantly a leg locker, should you try and add bolo back takes to your game? And if you're primarily a back taker, should you try and add leg locks to your game? And do you think there's a happy marriage between the two?
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of learned more of the berimbolo game first, but I found it very easy to transition in over to learning leg locks, just because a lot of the positions, it's like, okay, we're in a berimbolo situation, I move my leg here, he moves his leg here, now we're in a heel hook situation, and then vice versa, you could be in a leg lock situation, then kind of move the situation around a tiny bit, and then split second later, you're more in like a berimbolo situation. We see leg lockers counting berimbolos with leg locks, and we see berimbolo people countering leg locks with berimbolos. So definitely think something that could be further developed. As well, one of the guys in Scotland that's kind of best known for leg locks, Jack Brown, he was up in Aberdeen for a little bit for a while, and it was quite interesting because kind of my game coming from berimbolos, him coming from leg locks, he was at the time wanting to learn berimbolos, and I was at the time wanting to work leg locks, so it was quite cool that we could kind of exchange some ideas and help each other out on that. But yeah, I think Matthias has probably done it the best, kind of more well known for his leg locks, but has got like a really strong berimbolo game. But I think that is something that we could see explored a little bit more by the guys that kind of hyper fixate more on guard. Obviously, there's so much jiu-jitsu to cover. So like if you're maybe one of these more well-rounded guys that wrestles and passes a lot as well, it's maybe potentially not worth investing in like both those things because you've got so much stuff to cover and so much stuff to keep on top of anyway. But if you're one of these guys like Shuzinski or Levi that kind of hyper specializes in the guard, I think blending those two things would be really worthwhile for you.
I think for Shuzinski's point of view, like as devastating a leg locker as he can be, he might find in a match he's just not got to the finishing position, and there comes a point where he has to take points to win the match. So adding in a way to get points, very useful for him. And then the flip side, Levi, amazing back taker, but there might come a point where he just like can't get on the back to secure the points or whatever, and it's like, well, where's he going to then finish the match? And if he can add leg locks to his game and become very dangerous from that point of view, that can be another big string to his bow. So I just think potentially like that we're going to see legs and bolos really like explode over the next wee while, and it'll be like a great like double attack that people have. We'll get a deeper look at the ADCC Asia trials, and now that that's the last trials, we'll really get an idea of like how the ADCC world champs themselves are going to stack up, and there'll be lots of chat on that to come. Just one more point before we finish. Someone asked, what are our thoughts on the tournament that Craig Jones is trying to put together? From what I understand, there is now significant investment in the tournament, so there's a big prize pot available. Craig is trying to recruit, is it 32 grapplers, Calum?
I've kind of just heard some rumors about this thing and not like.
So like everything being talked about right is essentially rumors, and Craig has put out what he's trying to do, and I think he's trying to get 2 divisions with 80 kilos being the dividing line. And initially it was $1 million for the winner, maybe.
Yeah, and I heard as well, just as a bit of a troll to ADCC, so if you win the ADCC, you get $10,000. I think his plan is, as a participation, you will get $10,001, and then you'll have the $1 million to potentially win if you get first place.
So, there's no hard and fast rules written down or whatever, that we can go on. It's just chatter that Craig apparently is trying to put on an event. I think it's going to be in August, which is prime ADCC season. ADCC lands in the middle of the month, so we don't know whether it'll be before or we don't know whether it'll be after. And to his credit, it seems Craig's managed to bring in money for the event, and there's going to be a great prize pot on offer for whoever wins, and money on offer for all the athletes. And my first instinct is anything that brings money into jiu-jitsu and gives athletes a chance to earn good money, that's a good thing. Like, the more tournaments that give money, good money to athletes, is great. What do you think on that before we go any deeper?
Yeah, obviously that's only positive, but whether that actually happens or not, don't really know. So like adding that up with the two, presuming that he's not given like a big pot to like second and third place and it's just first place, that's already looking at like 2.3 million between the first prizes and then giving everyone 10k as well. Then we don't know if he's having to hire to run the event or like what arena he's having to rent out or anything. So I don't really know the logistics of kind of big jiu-jitsu events, but seems like a tall task, so we'll see if it happens. But there's not really too much information out there. Obviously, if everything goes as he says, that sounds amazing, and I'm sure he'll get like really good people doing that just because of the money you get for showing up and winning. But whether it happens or not is yet to be seen.
Okay, so there's that side of it. It's like, if it happens and athletes get a chance to earn money, amazing. But will it happen? So that's the first thing that we're thinking about. Second thing I was thinking about, right? It's round about the ADCC. Now, I know Craig's trying to make a point that he doesn't think the prize money available at the ADCC, which is 10,000 if you win a weight class division, and I believe 40,000 for the absolute, is big enough, right? And he's entitled to his opinion on that front. But I don't know if you put on your event next to the ADCC that it's going to be that attractive to athletes, even if you've got good prize money on offer, because you can't buy prestige, you can't buy history. I think if you look at golf, for example, the Saudi Golf Tour, the Live Golf Tour pays a load of money, right? But they haven't been able to attract absolutely every golfer to it, although there's sort of like mergers happening just now. And also, like, when they put on events, like, nobody was really watching them, you know? People, like, the incumbent has a huge advantage in this situation. Like, all the history of the ADCC, what that event means to athletes and fans means that people are going to want to compete at it, even if they have no prize money. And people are going to want to watch it. And if you talk to fans, like, they know what the ADCC is, and they're going to be interested. That's why when we're chatting about events, like, we've focused so much on the ADCC, because people we train with at the gym know ADCC, right? But they don't know absolutely everything. Like, you know, the further down you go, the more you get into, like, okay, everyone knows IBJF Worlds, and they'll be interested. But, like, even getting into, like, the Euros and the Brasileiro and the Pans, like, people don't really know at our gym, like, who's necessarily competing, and they're, like, grapplers who like grappling. But it really is, like, the big event that people dial in on. And I think the ADCC World Championships is that big event in no-gi grappling. And it doesn't really matter if Craig puts on an event and gets loads of good guys to it. It's not the ADCC. I don't think it's going to carry the same weight.
Yeah, as well, like, obviously, you're maybe not making so much money up front with ADCC, but, like, from the performances Craig's put on and the name he's made for himself from ADCC, in turn, because of that, how much money has he made in his career? Like, probably, like, potentially in the low million. Yeah, exactly. Then, like, guys like Lachlan Giles getting a bronze medal, like, not even winning, he didn't get any money for that. But then off the back of that, how much money has he made? Probably a ridiculous amount between the DVDs and this submeta. Obviously, that's coming off the back of that. So I think it's that sort of thing where, like, yeah, is the prestige of it and the eyes that are on it. And then if you go out and put a good performance on and then market yourself in the right way afterwards, you can make a lot of money in jiu-jitsu terms.
You're walking in the footsteps of absolute legends of the game, like Roger Gracie and Marcelo Garcia, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants if you do great things at the ADCC. I mean, it's like how that tournament has grown over the years and all the legends that have competed at it. You want to be like the next legend of the ADCC. Like, you look at Mika Galvao going after the Super Slam, you know, doing the Euros, doing the Brasileiro. Like, he doesn't need to do them, you know, and they're not going to earn him big money now. But if he becomes like an absolute legend of all time that wins like 5 huge tournaments in a year, you know, that's just going to, like, not only add to, like, how his career's remembered, but yeah, probably, like, put him at a point where, like, not only is he going to earn more money from jiu-jitsu, but possibly, like, he puts him into the eyes of, like, sponsors from out with the jiu-jitsu bubble. You know, his name gets so big that he gets eyes on him from elsewhere, you know? I think athletes need to look at that. It's like, it's not just about what's happening in your, like, our little jiu-jitsu bubble. I mean, how amazing would it be if, like, Nike got wind of someone like Nicky Galvao and were like, oh, actually, like, we're going to get into grappling and like, let's like use this guy as our poster boy.
Yeah, all these opinions are obviously based on very little information, so opinions might change as more information comes out, and then we'll let you know. But yeah, just based off of that, I think we've both kind of got the same opinion.
Okay. Next event on the books is Fight Pass, May the 15th, headlined by Nicky Rod against Mason Fowler. We'll do our best to preview it. Can't promise it, because we've already broken one promise, so don't they get a reputation for it. Although, to our credit, Calum, to our credit, right? We didn't do a preview for who's number one, right? But we got a review up pretty quickly after the event happened on what is the nicest day in the northeast of Scotland for probably like 5 years. Like, the sun is absolutely beating down outside my kitchen window, and here we are talking about grappling. So you can't say that we're not doing our best to share our opinions about jiu-jitsu with people. But yeah, hopefully we get a preview for the next Fight Pass show. If not, we'll definitely get a review once we have watched it next week. Until then, go watch the ADCC Asia Trials, and then you'll hear about us talk a little bit more about that. Go watch WNO. Have a think about Craig Jones's tournament. If you've got anything to add to it, let us know. But I'm yet to develop a good sign-off for the show, Calum. What have you got?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, bye for now.